Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to our live stream today. Thanks for joining us again. We're back. And today I'm here with Kelly Clausen Vandiver, who, as you know, is a coach on my team. But more importantly, she's here with us today because she's a living example of how we have to change ourselves from the inside out in order to create changes in our circumstances. So today she's actually here to share her pretty remarkable story, and I'm really glad to have her. This is, I haven't even heard the whole story. So this is exciting for me. And I think it's really important to share because Kelly basically left a really toxic, abusive marriage with 7 kids in tow in order to create something healthy for her family. And now she's in a beautiful, loving, happy marriage. It's very conscious. It's very much in line with what she had dreamed for herself. And, you know, it was a journey. And so I'm excited to hear more about it, but more importantly, I think it's important to share with this community because this community is really all about trying to create healthy, authentic marriages. And this story is really a testimony for hope, for anyone who feels stuck, for anyone who feels like they're really longing for healthy love in a marriage, but they're afraid that that's not in the cards for them. So if you're in a bad relationship right now, that's really toxic and potentially abusive, and you feel really stuck, or perhaps you've just left a relationship like that and you're really disoriented and struggling, or if you feel like you just can't get clarity within yourself about what to do, both in terms of your intention and logistically, or if you keep second guessing yourself, wondering how much you should take or how much you should just quote unquote make the best of things, or if you just feel stuck in general, this is for you. So I'm glad you guys are here. And without further ado, welcome, Kelly.
I'm happy to be here as always.
Thank you for coming and talking about your story. I'm just, as I mentioned before, we're just going to kind of have a look at the trajectory that you went on, and starting from the beginning of where you were, where this story begins. Tell us a little bit about that. Like, what was the starting point? What was your marriage like, and how were you starting?
Well, the story begins really where it began. And my relationship that turned into my marriage with my ex-husband became physically abusive really early in, like probably within a couple of months. There was physical abuse, and it wasn't like this beating or punching or slapping. It was more, at that point in time, it was more of like a grabbing. It might be a grabbing on the throat or a grabbing of the body. And those are all signs that, you know, today would make me, you know, leave any relationship like that. But back then I was young, right? I was like 21, 22 years old. I was very naive, very green, very young, and, you know, really low self-esteem, low self-worth. And look, I grew up with parents who I watched them, you know, fight constantly with one another. So to a certain extent, you know, you think it's just normal, right? Like you just think, this is normal. This is what was modeled for me.
Right.
And so, you know, I just stayed. I thought, oh, this is normal. And so, and it would be, you know, when we would get into an argument or something, and as most people can tell, I'm not one of these, I'm going to lay down and be quiet. I was always very vocal. I always have been. And so when you're with someone who is toxic and abusive and physically violent, those aren't the best people to talk back to. You know what I mean? Because they become very harmful to you. And so, yeah, it started early on, the physical abuse, and I just stayed, and we got married and had children. And throughout those years, it was just very abusive, physically, mentally, emotionally. On his end, there was a lot of, you know, porn addiction, sex addiction, and he was just very, very abusive, you know. And
was there a point in which you were like, this is abusive, this isn't normal, this is not, or not, I shouldn't say normal because it is pretty common, but that it wasn't something that you wanted anymore? Yeah. Was there a point in time where you were like, I don't want to be here, but I don't know what to do about it?
Yes.
When did that happen?
Well, that happened when I was pregnant with my last son, Noah, who's now 10. And I'll get to that in one second, but I want to say this, that all throughout the marriage, I was in this secret personal hell of misery. I didn't know myself. I was not in really touch with myself. I was very much living in default mode. But I was always very secretly miserable inside and not happy. And so I just wanted to say that I wasn't happy at all the whole time.
Even before you were thinking, I need to leave, right? You were not happy.
I was not happy, but I was lying to myself and to everyone around me that I was very happy, that I have this is a good marriage, this is a good man.
How did you make meaning out of that? How did you make sense of that? Did you on some level feel like because you were talking back, you deserved it, or?
Oh, making sense of the abuse.
Yeah.
Because again, it was modeled for me. Mm-hmm. It was done to me, right? Mm-hmm. As a child. So it's just part of normal life. Mm-hmm. It's just how it is. Mm-hmm. And so then I was pregnant with my last son and my 7th child. Yes, I have 7. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous. But anyway, that's another interview, right? But how do you do 7 kids? So I was pregnant. We owned a business together. And at the end of the marriage, it really became very evident that there was a lot more going on than I was aware of. He's mentally ill, like just has some undiagnosed mental illness. Even like borderline like schizophrenia, will hear like, and he became obsessed with recording me constantly. He would hide audio devices like all over the house, in my car, in our business.
Was this like he thought you were cheating on him kind of thing? That's why he was recording you?
So he was very paranoid, and especially there in the end. And he started having these sort of like manic, like bipolar, crazy things where he'd cycle. And he would leave, for hours upon end in the evenings. And then he would come home and he would be on these headphones listening to something, but he would do it, kind of off to the side, but, in front of plain view of everyone. And he would listen to these things for hours. And I was just like, what is he listening to? And finally I asked him, I'm like, what are you doing? And he was just like, oh, you'll see, you'll find out. You'll see soon enough. And so anyway,
wow.
I was probably about 6-7 months along. And it was like a Sunday morning. Our kids were gone and they were at their grandparents' house. And it was like we had just woken up. I'm pregnant, whatever. And he's just acting crazy weird. Your husband, right? He's just acting weird. And I was like, what's wrong with you? Why are you acting weird? And he basically just had this crazy look in his eye. And he was just like, I know what you did, blah, blah, blah. And just started, he had created.
Delusional.
Yeah. So basically he had recorded me at our business working on one of my clients who's been a client of mine for years. And he turned an innocent you know, back wax of a client, on a male client, to the most perverted, perverse, pornographic scene you could ever even imagine in your life. So he was like listening to these sound bites because he had recorded me. And by the way, my kids were with me, like at work, like, you know, he conjured up this whole story about how I, you know, had sex or blowjobs or whatever. I can't even remember the whole story, but he went so far as to, like, he was using like software to like, to like break apart like the words that were said in the really bad audio recording anyway. But he paid thousands of dollars to have that, like, snippets of this audio sent to this like forensic sound guy, and have him totally give tell him what the dialogue was. And it turns out it was totally innocent, right? And the guy even said to him, like in a letter to my ex-husband, was like, you know, I've seen these kinds of things before. I suggest you get help for yourself. Like, he was really encouraging him to get help for himself. That it was good for him, and that he's seen his clients lose their families, everything that they love because of this kind of stuff. So it just kept on. And then, you know, the accusations kept, you know, coming. And then he was trying to get me to say out loud, yes, I did this. Yes, I did this. Because he was like trying to get me to say it so he could get it on a recording, I think, to like whatever. But he, it just continued. And I, the whole time, I'm like, you're crazy. You know, I'm like even thinking, you know, this is hilarious. But then he really started to get physically violent. I mean,
it progressed.
Yeah. In front of my babies. You know, at the time they're babies, not anymore, but at the time they're babies. You know, I have 2 preteen daughters at the time who are watching this. And I mean, to the extent of, you know, pulling me around, you know, on the floor by my hair, hitting, blocking, recording me constantly, trying to get me to admit to something that was ridiculous. And it just became crazy. And so I'm going to every therapist, every counselor I can get in front of, and none of it was helpful. Nobody called him out. Nobody said to him, look, you need to check yourself in. You really need to get some help. Even going so far as getting him to a place where, like a treatment center, telling them, listen, this is what's happening. This is what he's saying. This is what he's doing.
Well, they're trying, because you can't really do couples work in a situation like that.
No. And back then I didn't know what I know now, right? Like I didn't. And I mean, the best thing to do would have been to leave long before, you know, it had gotten to this point. But here I was. And
was there a point where you were like, okay, I know I need to go. I want something better.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to get out. Like, you know, where you had that discrepancy between the vision and where you actually were.
Yeah. So when I decided I was totally done, I was probably about 8 months along. We had gone to several counselors. I was not admitting to this. And he just was not, you know, willing to get help, get better. He wasn't changing his mind. And I was in the shower, and I remember, you know, rinsing my hair and looking out the shower. It was clear, you could see through it. And his eyes were black. He looked evil, and his energy had completely shifted. And he was holding a belt, and he basically was like, tell me what you did, or I'm going to beat you until you tell me. And again, I was like 8 months along at that point. And I was just like, no, don't. You know, here I am with child, and I'd been dealing with all his shit already. in front of all of my little ones, and he has a belt, and I'm just like, so he opened the door, yanked me out, and proceeded to beat the shit out of me, you know. For several minutes, I'm just hunched over, crying, protecting the baby energetically as best as I can. And then an idea came to me, and I lied to him, and I said, I think my water just broke. I think my water just broke. We have to go to the hospital. I was just like, and so we got in the car. He took me to the hospital. By the time we got there, he kind of had figured out what my plan was, which was to go in there and tell them, my husband is beating me and I need help, right? And so he basically, at that point, I was driving and he was in the passenger seat, and he said, if you go in there, you'll never see me again. I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to commit suicide and you'll never see me again. And so at that point, I either had the option to go in or stay. And because of the threat of him doing that to himself, I was just like, okay, if I go in, he's going to get arrested. His name's going to be in the paper. My kids, my business, these are the things that are going through my mind. And then, you know, so because
then it's not just that you're getting out of the relationship, it's that it's coming out in a really public way in your community.
Right.
And that would have been that's like a whole other thing that you were
right. And so, and I'm like due in a month and a half or something. And I'm just like, so I was scared. So we left and I said, I think I'm okay. And it just continued. And so at that point, after that happened, I made my mind up right then and there. I was like, as soon as the baby is born, I'm out of here. And so I began then trying to talk to him about it, let him know I wanted him to move out, get his own place. He wouldn't. And once I became really firm about it, well, then I love you. You're the love of my life. He had never said any of these things to me. Just desperate begging, right? Like to work this out, he'll get help and all of this. But I was done. See, I had made up my mind, and that I wasn't going to be treated like this anymore, and I wasn't going to be have my kids around that anymore. And so, yeah. So that's when I made the decision after that happened. And that really began my journey of going back home to myself, going inward, and really figuring out at that point, how did I get here, right? Like, holy shit, look at what I've created here. And so,
did you get individual help at that time when you knew, like, also, I wonder if you thought he might stop you, because usually, when you're in an abusive marriage, a lot of times they won't make it easy to split up. Were you worried about the fallout of that too? And would help for that? It's like a two-pronged question, I guess.
No, I tried my best to avoid the fallout I really just wanted him to leave. I really just wanted him to go, and he just wouldn't. And so at that point, I had to be the one to make the choice to leave and find my own place. And so, yeah, I started working with a therapist who was also a coach. And I remember telling her my story, and she was awesome. And she just looked at me and she said, Kelly, I just want you to know, you're not the crazy one. She's like, your husband's the crazy one.
Did you feel like you were the crazy one?
Yes.
That's interesting to me, like, because listening from the outside, it's clear you're not.
Right.
I wonder, how was it because of the things he was saying to you? Or was it just that you had to make that normal for yourself for so many years?
Yeah, how
did you think you were the crazy one?
Yeah. Well, like I said, before, like my self-esteem was obviously, in my self-esteem, my self-worth, like so many women, my insecurities around my body, my insecurities around my intelligence. I really was plagued with those my whole life. And so I put up with it because I thought it was, number one, I just thought it was normal. I thought that's what I deserved, right? Because I have a smart mouth. I come back at you. I'm not going to let you walk all over me. And so, and part of it was all the shit he would say to me constantly. You're so this, you're so that. You're not that talented. You're not, I mean, he was very demeaning about all of my gifts. So all of my gifts that I'm very good at, like I'm very confident, right? I'm a very naturally confident person when I'm with the right people around me. But with him, he would say just such mean, cutting things that after a while you begin to believe that there's something wrong with you. That I am the crazy one, that I am the narcissist, right? Like, you're the narcissist. Kelly, you're a narcissist, right? And so, and then not only that, you got your husband telling you all this shit. And then you go to these therapists, right? And these doctors, and no one is taking a stand for me. No one is taking a stand for my kids. No one is saying to this man.
That's shocking, really.
Or to me, ma'am, we recommend you get help and you leave. You need to be safe and your kids need to be safe. That was never said. So here I'm thinking, well, maybe there is something wrong with me. Maybe I am a bitch. Maybe I am a narcissist. Maybe, I need to check into that. So when you're a woman who has children and there is abuse happening, and I'm not one of these, again, I'm not one of these women who is gonna, just lay down and let you hurt me. I'm gonna fight back with my words. I'm gonna fight back with my body. I'm gonna protect myself. And so you somehow felt incriminated in it, like, this is a two-way street kind of thing. Yeah, partially. Yeah. I'm like, I don't back down from his bullshit. You know what I mean? So, whenever he does anything to me, whenever he says anything to me, I'm going to come back at you. And so, now, and with women who aren't that way, who are a lot more meek or mild, who really don't stand up for themselves, I can only imagine how difficult that is for some of those women to go to therapy and say, this is happening, and no one takes sides. There's no stand taken for the feminine and children. And so, yeah. That's so shocking to me that no one said anything like, you need to leave or safe because it's not going to stop. Well, finally, when I went to the therapist that I started seeing by myself, she did say it to me. She did. She had the guts to say it. And she said, you need to continue on your plan to leave and get a safety plan together, find a place that's, safe and comfortable for you and the kids, and get out of there, And so I continued to see her, and that's really where my inner journey began. I got out of my house that I loved very much, but I found a little rental up on a mountain away from everything, and I moved in there with my kids. And I started really diving into the inner work of figuring out, okay, how did I get to this place? And how do I never attract that kind of person into my orbit again? So, yeah. So it was really, originally it was just to get safe. And then in that process of like, I need to protect my kids, I need to stay safe,
then you were in that position of being able to really self-reflect and go, how did I get here? How do I make sure this never happens again? And then starting that inner journey.
Yeah.
So were you skeptical at all when you first started that process and when you were working with a therapist and coach? What
No.
kind of, okay. So what was the struggle for you, if there was any at all, in terms of getting from having, you know, feeling like maybe this is my fault, or, you know, this poor self-esteem and the low self-concept, and to getting to a place where you were able to have a really healthy, wonderful marriage?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that path.
Okay.
Because that is so fascinating. Like, how do you get from like feeling like beaten down and like you're just trying to survive and get through the day? I can't imagine single momming it with 7 kids. And then doing that inner work at the same time. How did that go?
So that would go when the kids were asleep at night, or like my therapy would take place during like my work day. I would take like a half a day and go to therapy, usually like once a week for a good 8 months. You know, I was in there every week, really for a couple of hours with this therapist and coach. And the first thing, and I brought the book today to show everyone, she handed me this book because what I told her was, in probably our second or third session, she's like, so what are your goals? What do you want? And I'm like, I want to understand how this happened. I want to understand what part I played in it. And I want to find myself. Like, I really want to figure myself out and own my shit. You know, I want to own my shit. And so this book she gave to me called The New Personality Self-Portrait by John Oldham, Dr. John Oldham. And Dr. John Oldham is a doctor, he's one of the doctors who head up writing the DSM, you know, for therapists. To help diagnose people's personality disorders and things like that. And so she recommended this book, and she's like, take this book, take the test in the book. You can actually take this test online now, which makes it a lot easier. But basically this book, this test tells you very uniquely what your dominant personalities are. And it's very accurate. And the awesome thing about personalities is every single personality has its gifts, right? Like it's and on the opposite spectrum of being in your gift and your personality, there's the personality disorder that comes along with every personality. And when we are in our own unconscious patterns, we move into the dysfunctional parts of ourselves, into our into those versions of ourselves we do not want to be, right? And so this book was just so life-changing because it was my first taste into who am I? What are my gifts? What are my strengths? And then what are my personality disorders? Like, I need to know. And once I started looking at all of the my natural personalities disorderly sides, I noticed myself in a lot of that. And so when you're able to be aware.
Was that the part you played? Did you find that, okay, that's the part I played in being in the situation?
Yeah.
Or being in this marriage for so long?
Partially. I mean, yeah, for sure. It, you know, it just kept the dynamic going, right? Like, I'm weird, I'm in my dysfunction. He's obviously really fucked up, and that's triggering the hell out of me. It was just dysfunctional, the whole thing.
Right.
But the cool part is once you're self-aware and you're able to shift out of that dysfunctional part of yourself and back to functional adult, it's just so empowering because, you know, you really start to notice, because it tells you, like, these, when you notice yourself here, you're in dysfunction, shift out of it, be an adult. And so that's really what I started to do. I started to become really aware. And I got to just a really great feeling space. I mean, I dropped like 80 pounds. I just really started to love myself, dig myself. Another really cool part of the book was that a lot of my strengths that I had and a lot of the gifts that I've always had, those weren't things that were praised, right, when I was younger. They were things that I was told, I'm too loud, I'm too much, I'm too big, it's too extra, and you need to, quiet down, don't be too much, don't take up so much space. So for a long time, I thought that I was, that part of why my self-worth was in the shitter was because I was shit on, sort of, like,
yeah, right,
and told that
we absorb the messages of our environment, and especially in those early years, we just take that in as truth, and it becomes hardwired into us.
Totally. And I just I thought that my dramatic self was a detriment. I thought I was weird. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
The way I talk, the way I speak, I thought that was weird. So it was just, I learned that all of these personalities that I have about myself are actually really my gifts. So I stopped shitting on my gifts and really owning them. That was huge. So into your gifts and into your power is a huge, it was huge for me. So now it's been, 10 years, 11, almost 11, 10 and a half years since then. And I'm so glad that it's a long time ago now, and that I'm in a new place. And so because I was doing the inner work and because I had been on that path for a while, I attracted my now husband, who was on that journey inward as well and was really in a good place also. So when we met, we were both just in a really good place, and we've been together ever since, and we've been growing, living together and loving together ever since. And he's fucking amazing, I'm so thankful.
So was that something that you consciously dreamed up, like, I really want to have a healthy marriage, and I'm willing to let go of all the dysfunction. I'm willing to step into who I fully am from a place of self-love, and so that I can line up with someone who can meet me there?
Yeah. So
was that a conscious process, or did that happen sort of like by surprise because you were just operating from a place of self-love and just not even thinking about it? Because I've heard both sides can be true, but I'm just curious which it was for you.
To be honest, I had done an exercise that my coach had me do, and she was like, you need to, really come up with a list of values that are really important to you and qualities that are important to you. And so I had that list, and it wasn't something I was really ultra focused on, but I'm a really great manifester. And so because I had that sort of North Star always in the back of my mind, it just happens, right? And so, but I wasn't out there really consciously like, yes, I'm looking for this man. I was honestly having a shit ton of fun traveling with my girlfriends if I didn't have my kids, and being single. You know what I mean? And meeting different men and stuff like that. And, the age of 30. So, so it was conscious and not, it was kind of,
right.
This is why I leave it to the universe kind of thing.
Coming from a place of feeling like you needed that.
Right. Right.
You were open to it, but it was really inside out.
Right.
So I'm curious about, what was the hardest part for you on that journey? Did you ever doubt yourself? Did you ever second guess yourself even after you left? Did you ever wonder, either did I make the right decision?
No.
Or did you ever wonder, like, do I have what it takes to do this?
Yeah. So I realized
the place that I want to be at.
Yeah. I realized now, making the decision to leave, I was thinking all those things. Am I making the right decision? Can I do this on my own?
How long was that period of time? How long was that period of time where you were contemplating before you made that decision?
Like a year.
Okay.
Probably. And then things just got worse and worse and worse and worse. Like even before I got pregnant with my last son, I was already thinking, I think we're at the end here. This is just not making me happy. And so, yeah, about a year. But then after, you know, I left, there was never a moment where I was like, oh, did I make the right decision? Never any of that, because I realized quickly and early on how much peace there was in my life not being in his energy fields. It's like letting go of him was like letting go of all of the negative energy bullshit. You know what I mean?
Trying to manage chaos is exhausting.
Yeah. And so I was like so much more at peace, and it was just awesome. So, and then I realized also that I could do it on my own. I could totally do it on my own financially and take care of everything. And so, yeah. And so I just continued and, but never looked back. No.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. So what do you feel like you got the most out of this inside out process in terms of results in your life? And then I want to ask you about your marriage too.
Yeah.
Because that's obviously something you wouldn't be able to sustain if you hadn't done this inside out work.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me the first question.
Just what is the biggest thing, I think that I asked was, what is the biggest thing that you got from your inside out transformation? What in terms of results for your life?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I mean, well, first of all, it got me my husband, who's awesome. And it got me my self-love, my freedom, the whole trajectory.
You got yourself out of it.
Yeah. I love myself, right? Like I have this deep self-awareness and this deep love for myself. And that's really the biggest part right there is like when you've got
first.
Yeah, when you've got holes all throughout your self-worth and you shit on yourself daily, there's no amount of any love anyone can ever give you that's ever going to be enough. Like that's an inner job. That's
you won't believe it.
Yeah. You can think like I'm a good person. Like you can think I deserve the world. You can think all these things consciously, like with your mind, but if you don't feel them, that's a shitty place to live.
And there's really no shortcut to that. No shortcut. It's really just being willing to surrender, giving up the things that you think are keeping you secure or keeping, the status quo. Some people equate that with security.
Yeah.
Being able to totally let all of that go.
Yeah.
Whatever the public thinks, whatever your community thinks, whatever your parents think, whatever. Yeah, because it's hard. It's a hard decision, even though you knew you needed to do that.
And it was hard. It was hard for my family. Like, I had family literally take my ex-husband's side.
God, that's hard.
And help him because of his story. I had kept all of this stuff a secret, and I was lying to everyone about my marriage. Everyone, right? And they think, oh, Kelly's being dramatic, right? Because I am larger than life, especially in person, and so in terms of my personality and my energy, and so they, but now it's all better. It's repaired, but at the time, my family was against me. I lost, 3/4 of my business. There was a big business split. It was just drama, and trauma for sure. But if anything, you have to burn that old shit down to have your dreams. You have to burn away all that negative shit so you can make room for the good shit, right?
Yes, exactly. And you have to literally take your life apart to put it back together the right way.
Totally.
It's not even going to closely resemble your life. If you want it to look different, you have to take it apart completely.
You have to burn it down.
Really decimating all that you know, especially in that radical of a situation. Yeah. So it takes an enormous amount of faith. And I think what I'm getting from hearing your story is just once you had that clarity in yourself,
yeah,
even though you didn't know how you were going to do it, you had the clarity and you knew what you needed to do and you found a way.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest part, is getting to the clarity. Then once you have the clarity and you know, then you can handle opposition from family. You can handle the logistical problems of where to live. Everything becomes a solvable problem. Everything becomes like pain and drama, but it's in the service of where you need to go. And you're clear about that.
Right.
Once you have that, I think that's because we talk to a lot of people, you know, in the program, and not in the program once they're in the program, but people where we're thinking maybe we can support them, where that really is the hardest part of, is really not knowing what they want or if their decision is the right decision. Should they stay? Should they leave? Right. But once you make that decision, if you're in a really toxic relationship and you know, and it's just getting worse and worse, that you have to believe that you can get something better, and that you're making the right decision, and then everything else follows with the right support. And you found the right support.
Totally. And the right support at that point in time was not my family. I had to have boundaries for myself and for them. And I didn't speak to any of them for probably almost a year because I had to go inward. I had to get strong. And today everything's great, but it took us a while to get here. You know what I mean?
Yes, and you just have to have faith, right? You have to have faith that you can repair the fallout that happens along the way. And I guess I'm just highlighting that because I think really the reason that we're sharing this story today is to offer hope, because I think a lot of people think that their current circumstances is defining what your future or your possibilities are.
And it's totally not.
No, you have to really, like, as you've shown, you have to change from the inside out. You have to change yourself first, and you have to feel like you can hold a vision of something that's not yet true as if it's true, and hold it in spite of the feedback of your immediate environment.
Totally.
You cannot take the feedback of your immediate environment as a yardstick for where you're going. That's the meaning of faith. I
had to completely ignore. You're crazy, Kelly. You're crazy. You're crazy. You're crazy. You're crazy. I don't give a fuck what you think.
That's freedom right there. Yes.
Yeah, I do not care. I'm a grown-ass woman. I have 7 fucking kids.
No. Right. Good for you, Kelly. It's really cool to hear your story. And I just want to hear, before we close, can you just share a little bit about your marriage now?
Yes.
Just because it's such a wonderful, wonderful, happy ending to this whole story.
So, I've always been oriented towards love and relationships since I was a very little girl. And I've always wanted this deep, like, sensual, romantic connection with a man, right? Since I was really little, I've always wanted what my parents did not have. And so I've always been oriented that way, always. And, you know, I got exactly what I wanted in a man, in a partner. He's so loving and he's so giving and he's such a great dad to my kids. And he just is so willing to go there with me and do the work every single day with me. And because, you know, when we met, we've been together since then. And so it's all fun and great in the beginning, right? And then we got a couple years in and we hit a rough patch, you know, for a couple of years, even though we were still coaching people, we're still working with clients, we're going through this work, right? And, and then that's about the time I started working with Dr. Terry Real, and taking his courses and really getting well-versed in his technique, you know, RLT, and started using it really in my marriage, right? And it really it just set us up for success. And so we've really been able to work through our shit because the patterns, they travel, the trauma travels, right? It all comes with you to the next relationship. Right. And if you're not aware of your patterns, and even if you are and you have done some work, we are made to evolve as human beings, always. And you can do that in a relationship. And that's really the gift of being in a marriage, in a conscious marriage, is you're constantly growing, right? Like,
it's not like you have to have it all figured out and you're perfect before you can then be in a great relationship.
Right. It doesn't work like
that person.
Yeah.
You know, you can do the work together. Yes. And you can grow together as long as it's mutual and you have the right tools and you're willing to do the work.
Yeah. So we've done a lot of work to answer your question, and we continue to do it. Healing is not a linear process. Right. It does not work like that. And so we have been living together, loving together, and healing together as lovers and best friends and business partners now for almost 9 years. So I'm really thankful, and just it's
so inspiring.
So worth the work.
Yeah, it is totally worth it. It's joyful. It can be hard, but you know, the return on your investment of that time and energy is so magnified. It's way more than you put in. You get more back. So
totally.
Thank you for sharing your story and really reliving all of that for us today, and just sharing really your whole journey with us, because it's pretty personal, and I appreciate that. And I think that it's going to help people that are listening to offer hope. To know that they can get there if they are willing to take that risk and to prioritize health for themselves and to do that inner work and to get self-aware. Anything is possible.
Anything and everything.
Yeah. So I just want to invite anybody who is listening, if you guys are feeling like you want to find out more about this, if you want to understand more about this process of inside out change, you know, so that you can manifest the marriage that you desire, or to transform the marriage that you're in, depending on the situation, so that you can like not settle for unhealthy love, so that you can truly get something healthy and authentic, and you can be fully who you are in a relationship. Yes. I want to invite you to book a call with us at monikahoyt.com/talk. And basically what we'll do on the call, you can book yourself right into the online calendar. We will look at what your relationship looks like now, what the barriers are, where you're at, where you're stuck, and what you really want, where you really want to go. And if it's something that we can help you with, we will let you know. If it's something we can't help you with, we'll point you in the right direction. But either way, you got nothing to lose. It's a free call. So just book it with us if you want at monikahoyt.com/talk. And I just want to thank you again, Kelly, and everybody listening.
You're welcome.
And we'll catch you guys next week. And next week, you guys are going to talk a little bit more about some of the tools that we use to sustain a happy marriage. So we'll look forward to that next week.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.